All right, let's watch this new interview with the Diablo 4 folks and see what it's about.
I'm Chris Wilson, production director over the live service for Diablo 4.
Chris Wilson, like the one from PoE, from GGG. Good one.
And I'm Rod Ferguson, general manager of all things Diablo.
So
Yeah,
season
if you don't know Ross, you don't know
2
Diablo.
is going to be launching on October 17th, and it's called The Season of Blood.
Oh,
We're really
that's my mom's birthday. I'm probably gonna be late for that season. Maybe a day. I will see.
excited because this is going to be a new vampire threat is essentially invading Sanctuary. And so there's going to be a new quest line, so the player will be partnering
Nice.
with a new character named Eris, who's being voiced by Gemma Chan. So we're super excited to have her join our really, a great ensemble of voice talent. And she thinks she's going to be a great fit for the game. And on top of that, the character is going to gain access to new vampiric powers that you'll be able to use across all of the different classes to take out the new vampire threat that's invaded Sanctuary.
Alright.
So we'll have new legendary items and items, new uniques, and it's really going to provide a whole new way to kind of like
New uniques. Okay.
progress with your character and a new power fantasy.
Yeah, and then that's sort of the theme and story side of it. And then obviously with each season, as part of a live service, we want to do quality of life and make changes to the game sort of in the end game as well. And so
Yeah, please bring us character private stats like in Diablo 2. This is gonna solve a lot of things.
one example of that is in season 2, we're introducing 5 new additional bosses. Because we look at what is the progress you make from level of say 50 to 100.
Nice.
We wanted to have more milestones along the way where you can be like, oh, I can test my build against these certain types of bosses. And we also know there's a huge desire for our uniques and the uber uniques because they have a very low drop rate, and sometimes they really solidify your build. And so now with these 5 new bosses, you can actually target uniques, and you can go and have a much higher drop rate
So,
on an
from
uber
the
unique
bosses.
than you would in the open world.
Those 5 bosses, obviously it's interesting because the way people approach this kind of stuff now is they're very invested. So like at the same time as being excited, there's a level of cynicism towards everything that is coming out. So I saw the 5 bosses, excitement, and then immediately people were like, are they just going to be reskins of a boss that we know 5 times? So can you talk about like what those 5 bosses will actually entail?
It's a mixture of sort of like new and sort of, one of the things we heard a lot from players was like, I don't think we've ever even talked much about it, where the bosses are coming from, but there's a notion of like, I play these campaign bosses and I didn't necessarily get to fight them ever again unless I'm playing the campaign. So that's part of the inspiration. So there's going to be
bring
definitely
those
like
bosses
ways we
from
can
the
leverage
campaign.
content we've had, but also new content as well. And
Nice.
so that's, but the fact that
And
we're
bring
doing
Diablo in the
season
Diablo
one is
game
really
for.
exciting. And again, that idea of like, we've heard a lot of feedback around the Uber unique. So, and what's really interesting is that actually it's a boss ladder. So it's not like in Diablo 2 where you would just go farm a boss over and over and over and over again. There's actually sort of prerequisites to be able to summon a boss that you'll have to go through the bosses to get there. And so it actually has its own gameplay involved in even
This
having a
makes
boss
it cool
appear.
though.
What happens when something goes out into the world? When do you start to pick up on the general sentiment from the audience? What is it data points? Is it social media?
Both,
How do you
probably.
know what the sentiment is?
So with live service development, I mean, we're always paying attention to the community. So we're looking at all sources of feedback. We solicit surveys to some of our players, so we use that as one kind of funnel for information. We look at telemetry and data that's like coming back from like the
This
back
is
end.
good.
So we kind of see like where there are pain points or friction from just looking at data. But then also we're paying
That's
attention
nice, so
to
they combine
forums,
opinion
when we do a blog
the
post or
actual
release
data.
patch notes. We're trying to look at like, what is the response, what are things that are coming back from the community, and we use that to kind of help inform some of the decision points for the future.
Yeah, I remember actually on one of the campfire chats, they mentioned that they noticed where and when players die a lot, so they tweaked that as well.
And so what's great with the live service is like between seasons, patches, hot fixes, there's numerous kind of vehicles for us to kind of like inject change and evolve the game for the future. And it's always in pursuit of making
This
the
is
best
good.
possible experience for the players.
Yeah, it's
Well
one of the big
said, but
challenges is
let's
really
see
around
how
the
it
idea of
plays
the vocal
out.
minority. Like sometimes a very small group can be very loud, and that's why we use things like surveys, like because you're always managing sort of the qualitative information you get, where people's just opinions, and then the quantitative information you have, which is the actual data that shows what's actually happening. And
Yeah,
it's in a
that's
game where it's sort of
more
built on a power
important.
fantasy, like everybody loves candy, right? And so but you can't have candy all the time, and so that's one
Yep.
of the hard parts about managing is that sometimes there's a little bit of medicine and you need some sugar to go with it, right? And so as we're looking at our feedback and we're looking at what we need to do to balance the world, because we want every build to be playable and we want every build to be viable. And so sometimes you have to sort of manage that across all the different classes and all the different builds. And sometimes you need a little medicine. And I think one of the things as we look at season one, we want to really show that we're being responsive and reactive and being agile, but we sort of got 2/3 of the way there, and we had a lot of the medicine, but we didn't have the sugar yet. And so, but to be able to act quickly, we sort of said, well, that's good. We've got the fix, but when we didn't bring and here's the other fun part that makes that balance work. And so I think that's part of the criticism of season one is that we did the medicine, didn't quite yet do the sugar, and then we've been doing the sugar as we go now. And it was something our game director talked about in one of the live streams, is that moving forward, anytime we have to do any sort of significant balance, we'll always have that other side of it, like because it's really about, we're making the game for player joy. We're making the game the best game we can for players, and so. But sometimes they have to have a salad. They can't have ice cream for dinner every night, and so you just have to kind of balance your messaging, manage expectations, communicate more openly, and I think we're doing that now as we go into season 2.
Nice. I hope to see more of that.
You mentioned it earlier, but how do you account for the vocal minority in a way that feels like you're speaking to them, but also not balancing that with the realistic kind of achievements that you can do? Because it's obviously like Diablo 4 comes out, everyone's super positive, and everyone is like really up on it, and the vast majority of people are enjoying it. But then the conversation quickly turns into like, this is missing, that is missing. But that conversation is very much defined and pushed by a group of people that are at level 100 or 80, and they're the only people that are like really vocal. Right. So it can
Yeah,
seem
because
like
they've
when people are
seen
looking
more
at
of the
it,
game.
oh, this is a really pervasive issue, and it's actually just a small group of people.
How come a small group of people? I already have a couple of characters on hardcore which are level 100 and stuff, and I don't know.
How do you like approach that, and is there anything that you do to try and tell your own team like, hey, I know it looks like this, but we have to think about everyone, and how do you message that out as well?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the quantitative data really helps there, so you can actually see what's happening with the game, and you can go like, oh, this might be an issue for people who are level 100, and this is the percentage of people who have actually gotten there so far, and we can sort of look at how big of an issue that actually is. But I mean,
Yep. Makes sense when they look at their own data from the backends, from the servers. Then they can really tell how valuable the opinions they receive really are, and this is key, so they can prioritize. And they obviously listen and want to support the game, so probably it's gonna take a few seasons to balance out. I don't want to be pessimistic, that pessimistic, but I think between 6 to 10 seasons and we get something with most of the things we want, or actually better balanced game. But it definitely needs a couple of seasons.
I don't want to say vocal minority to be dismissive, because sometimes that vocal minority are also your influencers and the people who are, the tastemakers who will be like, hey, this is how we feel about it, and you want to take that in as well. And that's why it's always is a balance between
and people are like sponges.
What are we hearing
like,
and what are we
when
seeing
they hear
in the
an
game
opinion
and what
they
are we
like.
when we play. And I think that notion of like, hey, one of the things we were excited about with D4 is that as a mainline game, no other Diablo game actually had any end game at all. Like,
yeah, this is actually true. And I've said numerous times, like, okay, why people expect so much from a Diablo game? Because it's a new game. It never had quality of life. It never had a robust end game. What you can do is just go kill the boss over and over, and maybe the secret level or whatever, and that's it. But it's a real-time action RPG where you just log in, and within the first minute you log in, you already killed your first monster, and not only the first, which is what I like in it. You just log in, go smash, and you can log out anytime you want or need to without losing significant progress or losing anything at all. You just leave the game and can resume anytime. This is actually what made Diablo, if you remember, 97, 96, okay, but it was released like last day of 96 or the end of 96. So it doesn't account much, but anyway, it was, as far as I remember, the first game which was real-time action. Real time. You don't have to talk to NPCs for hours. You don't have to prepare for a half a minute battle for hours. You just log in and destroy. This is what changed the RPG genre whatsoever. This is what their main breakthrough was, and I'm so glad they kept this because I'm totally not fond of turn-based and all that. I don't want to prepare 2 hours to fight a minute, okay? So if I want to do that, I'll just go read a game book, like go to this chapter, go to the other chapter, write down stuff and all that, or a board game or whatever. But not my thing. I mean, it's not the 80s anymore, guys. Come on.
When the campaign rolled credits, you were done. And so we were really happy with D4 to have Helltide and Nightmare Dungeons and the Tree of Whispers and PvP. And so we felt like this was a great starting place. And so when we talked, even if you go back to our interviews pre-launch, we would talk about this is the beginning and not the ending of Diablo. This is a foundation we're building upon. And
Yeah.
you're seeing that,
I agree on that, and I think it's a great base to build on top of. I also said that so many times. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's what they wanted to achieve in the first place. Something to build on top of and support for many years to come. And maybe that's why it took them so long, so they can schedule, prioritize, and do things like they should be in a Diablo game. And because of all that, I'm not really sure why the high expectations after all. I mean, probably because it's a new game, relatively new game, but I'm not disappointed at all because I didn't have any high expectations. I received a Diablo game and I play a Diablo game. It has everything that the Diablo game has. But yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement. And judging by how they work on that, probably they have separate teams too many separate teams actually to do many different things. And sometimes they overlap each other. And that's why how things come in this way. For example, that team does the shop, that team does visuals, that team does dungeons, that team does combat, and that team does season. And in a big company like this, it's probably a very compartmentalized, so to say, and management has to be insanely good so this plays out well. And when it's that many people doing that many different things, it also takes more time. I know it might sound weird, but I can assure you that this is also why it takes even more time. Let's see what else they have to
Season
say.
2 with these 5 additional bosses.
Mm-hmm.
In Season 3, we're going to be bringing in leaderboards. This
Great.
is an evolution of a game over time. And so the
Yeah.
notion that you can kind of grind your way to 100 and go what the heck? Where's everything I was expecting? All that stuff is being layered in over time as we go, and we're continuing to make the game, better and better. So it really is just sort of
Yeah, imagine they put so many stuff, and when they have to fix something, they have to fix it on everything they already added as well, and that's even more work and might require even more people. I totally understand their position, not that I fully agree with it, because the game was actually really expensive, but okay, look at the new games. Just look at the new games, especially for consoles. They're extremely expensive. I mean, it's not just this game. Every new game is freaking expensive, like 2 or 3 more times than usual, right? Who makes $20, $30 games anymore? No one. They're all like $70, $100, even more. Look at Mortal Kombat, for example. If you wanna get it, you have to get like $200, especially if you want everything in it, like all the bonuses and packs and stuff. And on top of that, there's in-game purchases as well. Just saying, every new game is freaking expensive. So this one's actually kind of cheap compared to other new games.
Definitely take in what you hear, but also, trust but verify. Go and see what the data is telling you as well.
In addition to that,
Yeah,
I think the other
good point.
important piece of this is transparency, right? So we're really trying to create and be open with our community about setting expectations. Like, here's what we're trying to do
Yeah,
in the
this
near
is
future,
really good.
releasing patch notes early.
Yeah, they
Really
changed
just,
that so we
having
can
live streams, the campfire chats, letting
we
our,
can
our
react to
audience
them.
know, like, here's what we're trying to do in the short term. Here are things we want to even do in the medium term. Like he mentioned, leaderboards for season 3. Like, we're trying to just be.
Yeah, but the weird thing is, why not include them in the first place? Why not have them in the first place? That was weird to me. They should have had the leaderboards at start, but maybe they kind of rushed into it. I don't know.
Be more open about that information versus like holding everything to the vest.
And Joe in our last, he talked about philosophy. Like, here's why we're doing certain things. Because I think it's one thing to say what you're doing, another thing to say why you're doing it. And
Yeah, I like how open they are about this, though sometimes it makes them look foolish or kind of inadequate. Um, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but sharing too much sometimes can actually hurt you. Like we've seen, it already did, but it's a big company, big developer. I'm pretty sure with the bold moves they make, they very well know as well what they're doing, at least most of the times. And by sharing certain information, no matter how vulnerable this makes them, this actually helps them improving, because if they don't have the talent for many positions to fill in, and I don't know, it doesn't make it easy on them. And at the same time, it doesn't mean they should not do it. They should also hire like new people, exchange opinions more, which they already said in the developer videos, the developers who play and talk about the game and stuff like that, those kind of videos. And I think it's a great idea, but oftentimes the message will not be received well, because people, they just want to get the result, that they don't care how this is achieved, because for example they saw it possible in some kind of other game, but they don't know the complexity of the back end of this one, pretty sure. And maybe they just want this, want that, want this feature from that game and for the other game, but things don't work like that, guys. As a full stack developer and a company owner, I can tell you, I know why I'm saying what I'm saying, and I understand both sides, like uh, them. At the same time, I also understand the players, because I also play, right? And I can agree on pretty much everything which both parties mention, but in the end, the important thing is how everything plays out and how those parties stick together. Like, I notice a lot of negativity instead of constructive criticism, which kind of hurts you, the player, as well. If you have an idea, why do you think they should have the same idea and bring it to you? Right? Mention it somewhere, or just why not go work there and show us show everyone how it's done. All those people, usually people are like this. If they don't understand something, it's very easy for them to go negative about it. And later on, when they actually understand it, they feel kind of stupid about it. And especially if someone told them so, it's not like that. What can that someone tell them after they realized it, right? Thank you for the information that you finally realized it. Oh well, now where does this bring us? Nowhere, right? And this is the actual evil, stagnation and no development. But as I can see, they do develop, they do update, they do things they're interested. And just because they don't think like you doesn't mean you can't understand them and the other way around, like if it makes sense. There should be more communication between players and the company, I think, and things will go even better.
So I think helping people understand, like, oh, this is our goal, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and just give some background to why these decisions are being made.
Yeah.
You know, you guys have been quite candid with, you know, the patch came out and it nerfed some stuff, and you're like, okay, we did it wrong, we won't do that again. And then you talked about all the vehicles you have to kind of approach it. How do you feel about the expectation that that creates? Because it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Where you're like, oh, we
Yeah.
can like react, but then the expectation from the audience is when they demand something, they need it immediately, and they're like, why don't you put it? How do you guys as developers feel about that? And
Yeah, I remember about
how do you try
Vulnerable,
and
for example,
manage
was
those
too OP.
expectations?
Too OP.
It is a balancing act, you know, depending on what it is we're trying to address. I mean, it can obviously take development time to get it right? You don't want to be too hasty to just rush, you know, change. You may end up like imbalancing the game in a different way that you maybe didn't foresee. So you
Yeah.
have to take your time to really think through, like, okay, how do we want to address the
And
problem that's
test
been flagged?
before release.
Look at it in terms of priority as well. There's oftentimes competing priorities, so it's like making sure you're targeting the thing that's going to have the biggest impact for the player first and foremost, and then finding the right, you know, time to release those things. And so
Yeah.
it's just really a balancing act that, you know, our leadership and our designers have to really kind of like work through for each issue as it comes through.
Yeah.
There's also complexity of the development process. You know, when we look at,
Especially
we have
that.
essentially 3 teams working on the seasonal side. There's like, we have our odd teams, so like doing season 1, then season 3, then season 5. We have our even teams doing season 2, season 4, and then we have another team that's focused on what's going on in the live game. And so
Yep.
on top of those 3
This
teams,
is why
like,
things are
the odds
slow.
and evens are leapfrogging each other.
And it's
We've got our
normal.
live team, and then we actually have an expansion team working as well. And so when we hear a piece of
Yep.
feedback, there's always a
Got it.
conversation. If we agree with it, then it's like, is this a short term? Hey, we can do that as a hot fix overnight. Is this
What I can tell from this, they have big plans for this game. So anyone who's kind of disappointed for where it's going, just be patient, guys. They have lots of work and obviously lots of people to solve the so many problems.
more of a patch that has to come in 2 weeks, or actually it's something we're going
Yeah.
to address next season because of the way that, you know, we're a lot of the ways, that's part of the thing. Like when we put out season one was finished when we released, and so there was no real
Yeah.
player feedback yet, other than sort of the beta feedback. But after launch, like season 1 was kind of done, and so that's why we use that preseason time to tweak as much as we could, and why we, you know, removed the need for the altars of Lilith and that kind of thing. So it's just that notion that like the trains are always running, right? The trains are always leaving the station, and what can get on which train
Good analogy,
is always
though.
part of the balancing act of like, oh yeah, we agree with that feedback. Now which train can we actually make it on, and are we willing to delay other things to make that happen? Because I think sometimes people just feel like it's always additive, and really it's
Nope.
kind of like there's only so much
Definitely
scope
not.
that a team can do. And so to say like, oh, this new idea wants to come in, well then that means usually another idea needs to get postponed. And so when we're talking
Yeah.
about the prioritization, is like, oh, we want to do this. Are we willing to slow down this other thing? You know, and so that's definitely one
Makes
of the things,
sense.
the give and takes you have to do when you're balancing.
I don't want to say misunderstanding, but a lot of the kind of discussion is also attributed to things like the battle pass system and the season model as well. And some people
No.
say it doesn't feel like it works in Diablo, and you know, we've had
Yeah, it's the first Diablo game with Battle Pass, no? The weird thing is they decided to go symbolic, and the Battle Pass should reward enough so you can get the next one. Like for giving the time, and the money in the first place to get the battle pass, right? The extended battle pass, which is paid, and then the reward should let you get the next one. In this case, it doesn't. You have to do like 3 battle passes, and then like it was something like this, and they're like even a tiny fraction of the game currency wouldn't allow you to get it. So I don't know. They kind of screwed that, I think. And also with the button, I activated mine without even knowing I was gonna do that. Just by accident. On console, right? I don't know. This wasn't good.
Other people who make games similarly, like the Path of Exile, people looking at and be like, we're learning a
Mm.
lot from the viability of something like a battle pass model. How often do you kind of like reassess that, and do you think it does still work in this day and age? Especially because it's like a lot of cosmetic stuff and you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
upset the balance, and when it is like you can't put a lot of meaningfully changing content in there, is it even worth doing? How do you approach like looking at that kind of system?
I think that's what we're learning now. Like, that's one of the things is like we're having lots of conversation about the first time we've done something, and so in times we'll come together and we'll go like, hey, everybody, this is one data point, and we're looking at season 1 and like, what's the battle pass doing? What's the shop doing? What is the seasonal reset doing? How do we feel about it? And it's like, at the end of the day, it's one
Yeah,
data point.
they
So
need
I'm
more
really excited
data.
for season 2 on October 17th.
It's
because
obviously
that's
too
now
many
we'll have 2
things
data points to go
for
like,
them
okay,
doing
how
it
many
for the
people are
first
playing?
time.
How many people are engaging with Battle Pass and Shop?
Told you,
How's
bold
it all
movements.
working? And so I
Bold
think
moves.
this is all learning for us. Like, I know people tend to think like, oh, you had 10 years with Diablo 3, you must know everything. And the answer is very different games, very different team. And so,
Yeah.
and obviously the industry's changed in the last 10 years. So for us,
Definitely.
this is a lot of learning for us. So we're going to, make some mistakes as we're trying to make the game better and better.
Yeah. Do you think there's kind of like a different expectation on a team like the Diablo team, or
Well,
even a developer like Blizzard?
that
Yeah,
didn't
because
sound well,
obviously
but at least
you're
he's
seen as
honest
one of the biggest
about why
developers in the
things are
world,
happening.
but the thing that you're introducing is still quite new to you. There's the expectation, well, this is Blizzard. They shouldn't be allowed to stumble or able to stumble. They should know this stuff,
Yeah,
right?
this
How do you kind of like
sounds about right.
approach that sentiment, knowing
Yeah.
that there's no like
Very
pushing
good
back
question.
against it?
I mean, I think it's just like we're all kind of just working our way through it. It's like sure, we have a lot of benefits of being part of Blizzard, and we had a lot of learnings, and we were able to talk to each other and understand
Definitely.
what's going on in WoW and what's going on in Overwatch, and we can talk to each other. But at the end of the day, this team is like doing a live service like this is new for this team, and even we have some D3 veterans and things, but a lot of our team like. There's a good part of our team where Diablo 4, we were at the launch party where I was like, how many people, this is your first
You need D2 veterans to make this game better, I tell you.
game ever? And like a bunch of hands go up and you're like, this is the very first game they've ever shipped is Diablo 4. And so there's definitely like the combination of experience and the ability to access Blizzard, but like we're still going to learn as we go. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I get the, hey, you're Blizzard, you should never make a mistake. But at the same time, like, again, the industry is always changing, the games are always changing, the players are always changing. So it's just going to be a learning
Yeah,
as we go.
especially the players are always
what I love about a live
changing.
service is we can evolve over time. It's not a fixed state. And
Yeah,
so that with each
that's
season,
what I
we
like
support
about
the
it
game for years to
as
come,
well.
is that we can evolve and learn as we go.
I think what's fascinating about that is because we have a studio like you guys where you very much are like figuring it out as you go along to a degree, and it's kind of like the expectation is, why are you doing this? You should have the perfect product each time, and it's not thought of as great. But then on the flip side, you have a team like Larian, which just put out one of the best RPGs in a long time, but it was developed over 3 years of iterating, very publicly forward-facing, and people are celebrating that right now. It must be kind of wild to be in an industry where you can have two contradicting kind of like narratives on the same thing going, and like how do you deal with it on a day-to-day basis as developers?
They all have that. I mean, I'm just really happy that this feels like the year of the RPG.
Yep,
Like
definitely.
Starfield and Final Fantasy and Hogwarts, and all the stuff that's going on. So I'm just excited to be part of that. And I think they each have their own place when you think about like the turn-based versus the hack and slash versus
Exactly. They are that different. I hope people finally understand this because, like I previously said, I don't like turn-based. I'm not the target audience, and if you're just gonna praise a turn-based game to me, I can just like show you the finger or insult you, especially if you do it more than once. If you do that, you just don't know me. I don't know. Anyway, let's go. Let's see. But he's definitely right about this. And again, I'm not the target audience for turn-based. I quite not fond of it.
Third person versus isometric. Like I think it's
Yeah,
really
this too.
cool that the RPGs can have such a diversity,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I just think it's great that RPGs is really coming to the top this year.
Yeah, everything for everyone. Thanks for watching.